Where there is a will, there is a way. On a similar note, where there is a fish, there is a CCP fishing militia. After years of unabated fishing in China's waters, the Chinese fishing militia has now steered towards African waters to usurp the continent's fisheries. With absolute domination and full backing from the Chinese government, the CCP fishing militia was hoping to wrest control over Africa. And then the poor Africans chose to strike back at the CCP. And now the deprived Chinese are running for their lives in the West African nation of Sierra Leone. Hi and welcome. You are watching TFI Global, the foreign affairs and geopolitical analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I am your host Sanbir, and in this video I am going to explain how a small West African port city opened its dauntless rebellion against the mighty China. Let's begin. Tombo, a port city in the West African nation of Sierra Leone, is looking at a fervid economic crisis in the eye. The city's economy is heavily dependent on fisheries, but fishermen nowadays are getting debts and violence as a reward for their brutal 14-hour-day work at sea. Resources are disappearing and families are starving. People of the city say problems began only after China came in. The fisheries sector has a vital role in Sierra Leone's economy. It represents 12% of the economy and employs 500,000 of the nation's 8 million population. The sector is also the source for 80% of the population's protein consumption. You see, any factor impacting the fisheries becomes a national issue in no time. This is a matter of life and death for millions of Sierra Leone natives. And that's why people living in Tombo City are rising up in arms against China. Chinese fishermen have nearly usurped and seized Leone's marine resources, pushing indigenous fishermen to the cusp of impoverishment and starvation. About 40% of industrial licenses are owned by Chinese vessels. They pay negligible fees for these permits, underreport their catch, and overfish in Leone waters. Chinese vessels have brought other problems as well. Illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing, also known as IUU fishing, costs Sierra Leone $50 million a year. Last year, a joint operation by the Sierra Leonean Navy and the conservation organization Sea Shepherd Global led to the arrest of 5 foreign-owned fishing vessels in 2 days. Interestingly, 2 China-flagged vessels were also caught fishing in Sierra Leone's waters without a license. Those who protest against these China trawlers often end up facing violence and derogatory slurs. Alucine Cargbo, a 34-year-old mackerel fisherman, was quoted by The Guardian as saying that trawlers' crews threw boiling water at him when he confronted them overfishing in areas where trawling is prohibited. Another fisherman, Ibrahim Bangura, said confrontation with Chinese trawlers has become commonplace now. There's so many of them, Bangura says. They disturb my property, thrash my nets, and if you try to stop them, they will fight you. China has maintained its rank of the worst offender for fishing in a global index of 152 countries. Across West Africa, illegal fishing has emerged as the biggest threat to the livelihood of millions of fishermen. Stefan Akester, an advisor to Sierra Leone's Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources between 2009 and 2021, said that overfishing could have devastating consequences for the Leone fishermen. He said the Chinese fleet has been taking the profits of the fisheries for 30 years, and the impact on fish stocks has been terrible. This episode is now stoking anti-China sentiments in the country. This also became evident last year when a $55 million deal to sell 250 acres of pristine beach and rainforest to China caused massive outrage among conservationists, human rights activists, and animal welfare groups in Sierra Leone. China's debts and investments in the African continent have been turning sour. According to the Johns Hopkins University of Advanced International Studies, between 2000 and 2019, China signed 1,141 loan commitments worth $153 billion with the African governments and their state-owned enterprises. According to a report by the Singapore Post, China is increasingly finding itself being cornered by African countries on investment-related matters, with some of them cancelling contracts with Chinese companies as their shoddy work has induced tensions for the ruling dispensations in several nations across the continent. Countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, Sierra Leone, Ghana, and Kenya have begun cancelling Chinese projects, and Beijing is practically running helter-skelter for cover. All in all, the African nations are now discerning the perils of being over-reliant on China. Chinese money isn't easy. Instead, it costs nations their sovereignty and self-respect. Tombo marks the beginning.